Hi, good evening. I'm Mike Mangini, Assistant Superintendent for the Tempe Elementary School District, and I'd like to welcome you to our Superintendent Community Forum. This evening, you're going to be able to meet our final candidates for the Superintendent of the Tempe Elementary School District. During this forum, you'll have the opportunity to learn more about each candidate and provide written feedback to our Governing Board members. You should have each been provided a comment card and a pen to write your comments. Additional comment cards are going to be available in the back. We ask that you please leave your comment cards in the blue box prior to leaving to assure the Governing Board receives your input. The pens are yours to keep. If you're watching at home, you can email me directly at michael.mangini@tempeschools.org. That is Michael Mangini at tempeschools.org. You can also find me on the staff directory. I'll be able to accept your comments on the form until Saturday, November 14th. Questions for tonight have been pre-selected for finalists in order to assure that you hear responses from each candidate regarding topics that pertain to all of you, our community members. Tonight I'd like to introduce our first candidate. We have Dr. Stacia Wilson, Associate Superintendent of the Tempe Union High School District. We will begin with our first question from Sonia Mason, Conley Middle School.
Please tell us about your professional and personal qualities and experiences that have prepared you to be the next superintendent of Tempe Elementary School District.
Thank you, Sonia.
And I will let our viewers at home know that in order for everyone to hear the questions, I will repeat every question after the students. Please tell us about your personal and professional qualities and experiences that have prepared you to be the next superintendent of Tempe Elementary School District.
Well, good evening, everybody, and I'm really excited to be here tonight. As said, my name is Stacia Wilson, Associate Superintendent and for Tempe Union High School District. But first, I really want to tell you about me. And the first thing is that I'm a proud product of Tempe Elementary School District. I spent my K-12 education years here in Tempe and in Tempe schools. My beginnings started at Fuller Elementary School, and tonight is super special because I'm here at what was, in the 80s, Fees Junior High, and I graduated from McClintock. I grew up off of Baseline in McClintock. My parents still live in Tempe. My mother is a retired educator. My dad is retired from sales and marketing and the Air Force Reserves. I've been married to my husband, Rod, for 12 years, and he's in business transformation. But anybody who knows me knows that I'm a champion for all students. And I truly believe that every student comes to us with specific gifts and talents, and it's our responsibility as educators to help them develop and discover those gifts and talents, no matter where they are on their learning journey. I have had experiences on both ends of the performance continuum. My first experience as an English teacher was at a very high-performing school. And if you asked us at that time, who were we and what did we want to become? Well, we were one of the best schools in Arizona, but we wanted to become the best school in Arizona. Matter of fact, we rarely looked at the schools within our own district. We were looking at top schools around the state. It was an intense environment. It was highly competitive for students and employees. And I learned at that time a lot about excellence and about just the theme of champion comes in my mind. And 10 years later, I decided to become an administrator, and I moved to a school that was struggling with performance. It had been around a really long time. Matter of fact, the year I got there, it was having its 100th year celebration. And just kind of we had lost our way, lots of turnover in administrators and teachers. And after a couple of incidents that really kind of forced us to look internally and getting close to being underperforming, we came together and we had to ask ourselves, Who were we and what did we want to become? And so we started looking at standards, we started looking at curriculum, we started creating some strategies and putting things in place and setting some goals for students, and we were able to move the school from the C- to an A, and eventually receive the A+ award from the Arizona Educational Foundation. And then AZ Merit came, which was a different test in the way it was designed, and we got knocked down a little bit again. But we knew the work that needed to be done. And so at that point, we put that same work back in, and we improved the grade in 2 years, moved from a C to a B. Now being at the district office, it's clear to me to see that our schools in many ways are like our students. And there are things that every school needs, and there is a focus that every school should have for sure. But there are also some unique needs. There are unique challenges. There are unique celebrations. And that's important to acknowledge, and that's important to support and put resources around. And so tonight I'm excited to to have the possibility and to imagine the possibility of being the next superintendent for Tempe Elementary. This is a place where I grew up. These are schools where I attended. And so this is a wonderful district with a great foundation and good schools and a great culture. And so you've accomplished a lot. And so I ask, what is left undone? And that's what I would like to work with you on, to imagine the future for Tempe Elementary School District.
Thank you. Next we have Tiago from McCamey.
Our children are at the center of every decision we make in Tempe Elementary. What will your key priorities be to ensure that every student has the support that they need to be successful?
Thank you, Tiago.
Our children are at the center of every decision we make in Tempe Elementary. What will your key priorities be to ensure that every student has the support they need to be successful?
First, I want to say that I'm not coming in with these are the priorities and this is what's going to happen, because the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to listen and I'm going to learn, because I want to know the hopes, dreams, and aspirations that you have for your students. Those key priorities are ultimately to have students be successful in academics and all things that they do, and growing. We know that every student comes to us at a different place in their learning journey. And so we're going to make sure that we have strong quality instruction in place to support them. So that is our focus. We're here to help students learn, and that's going to be a principle of that. But we also know that our students need social and emotional supports, especially in times like now. And so it'll be important for us to collaborate and come together, and we want to know from parents. We want to know from our teachers. We want to know from our staff, what are the needs that our students have? We want to hear from our students to know that. And from there, we can set those priorities and look at it. And finally, you look back at that strategic plan, and how do we make sure those priorities are outlined in the strategic plan? Because ultimately, we want every student to have access to quality curriculum, quality programs, and quality activities.
Thank you. Next we have Hanna from Fees.
Tempe Elementary is a 32-year award-winning district when it comes to financial stability. If you become our superintendent, how will you plan for and ensure fiscal responsibility and good stewardship of all available resources?
Thank you.
Tempe Elementary is a 32-year award-winning district when it comes to financial stability. If you become our superintendent, how will you plan for and ensure fiscal responsibility and good stewardship of all available resources?
Well, I first want to start by saying that TD3 is solid with how it handles finances and its budgeting. And I know in 2018, recently, the district received a Certificate of Excellence Award. So this is definitely a district that has been a good steward with its resources. I intend to respect that process, first of all, because you've been good stewards of your resources, so I want to respect that process and just work with you on what are those priorities. I think we look at things in terms of what are the plans that we have for the future for our students, what are the needs that we have, and then we try to align our budget around those priorities and resources. But you have good practices in place, and so I don't need to come in and somehow tell you, you've been doing this, and this is something you have done really well for years. And so I intend to, as we look and imagine what the future will be, how do we align and make the budget work and fit the priorities that we have in the future and continue to be financially responsible.
Thank you. Next, we have Ethan from Ward Traditional Academy.
Parents play a critical role in their child's success. How will you build relationships with parents, increase parent involvement, and work with parents to meet the needs of their children?
Thank you, Ethan.
The question is, parents play a critical role in their child's success. How will you build relationships with parents, increase parent involvement, and work with parents to meet the needs of their children?
By meeting you where you are. So it is important that everyone has a voice and the opportunity to engage. That's very important. And I know that there are formal structures where that can happen, and you have those here in the district, and those can continue if those are things that you all like and want to continue. And then there are informal structures of how we can engage and participate. But ultimately, we want to find a way for everyone to give voice to the process. And so that's important. So it's really just looking at what we currently have and then finding more ways to give voice and an opportunity for families to engage.
Thank you. Hi, we have Krista from Gilliland Middle School.
How will you involve all stakeholders in decision-making and future planning?
Thank you.
How will you involve all stakeholders in decision-making and future planning?
I'm going to go back to what I said in the previous question. It's giving everyone a voice and an opportunity to engage. I think when we look at decision-making, decisions are best made and the path is clear when everyone has had an opportunity to engage and be involved in the process in some way. Sometimes it's a way where it can be in a physical setting such as this. Sometimes it's through our technology to give input, but that's important because you all are a part of the district and our students are the heart and soul of the district. And so your opinion and your voice matters when it comes to the decisions that are made. And so it does with our parents and our families, with the employees, with our community at large.
Okay, once again, we have Sonia from Connolly Middle School.
Please tell us about your success as a principal and/or district leader in developing partnerships with higher education and community partners to support the needs and success of our students.
Thank you, Sonia.
Please tell us about your success as a principal and/or district leader in developing partnerships with higher education and community partners to support the needs and successes of our students.
As a principal, there are many, we're in the city of Tempe, and it's an incredibly supportive city. And so we have wonderful programs like College Connect and other things where we can engage and partner. The other thing is, how do you bring in universities and connect them to students? And so one of the things that I've been able to do in some cases as a principal is work with different representatives and bringing them onto campus and helping to expose students to those possibilities. It's also working with different community organizations to do that. And even now, being an associate superintendent, partnering with other organizations to bring, one of the things we've done recently is an HBCU college fair, and how do you bring that into the schools to expose, especially in particular students in the Southwest who don't know a lot about that, showing them the possibility of those options across the nation as well. And so really it's about partnering and giving organizations and city leaders access to present to students so they can see these possibilities and know what their options are. And so that's what I would do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, once again, we have Tiago from McCamey Academy.
As a community, we have always placed a priority on educating the whole child, including PE, sports, visual, and performing arts. How will you work to support the continuation of these programs that are critical in educating the whole child?
Thank you.
As a community, we have always placed a priority on educating the whole child, including PE, sports, visual, and performing arts. How will you work to support the continuation of these programs that are critical in the education of the whole child?
Balance is important, and it's not just about the core areas. And so this is another thing that makes students excited about coming to school. So ultimately, about supporting it, it's making sure that I'm communicating with the people who are a part of these programs and those who oversee them and lead them, and working with school and district leaders to make sure that we have these quality programs in the schools so that you all can enjoy them. And then celebrating those things as well. But ultimately, it's just making sure that the resources are there and that we prioritize our students having balance within the school day so they can participate in activities such as this.
Once again, we have Hanna from Fees.
What will you do to help the community recognize TD3 as an institution that values equity, fairness, and inclusivity?
Thank you, Hanna.
What will you do to help the community recognize TD3 as an institution that values equity, fairness, and inclusivity?
We want all of our students to be successful. And we want all of our students to receive the social and emotional supports that they need. And we want all students to have a positive self-concept. And so it's important to know that everyone's in a different place in their journey with that. And when it comes to things like equity, fairness, and inclusivity, you can't wish that to happen. That work has to be intentional. So you really have to look at and examine your programs and do an audit of sorts and see where are we missing pathways for certain subgroups, for certain students. And then you have to address it. And I don't think this gets into a thing where you beat yourself up, and I think many schools and districts are starting to look at this, but it's work that needs to be done because every student should be able to see themselves in any program. So it's really about doing intentional work and setting goals around that and having targeted strategies, and then doing some ways of checking that along the way to see, are you hitting those outcomes? Because at the end of the day, every student should have equitable opportunities to quality curriculum, quality programs, and quality activities.
Thank you. Once again, we have Ethan from Ward Traditional Academy.
Thanks to the generosity of our taxpayers, Tempe Elementary has grown to a 1-to-1 ratio district over the past 5 years. Access to technology is very important, as we have seen during the pandemic. However, many of our children have challenges around internet access, As superintendent, what would you do to help bridge this gap so all students have access?
Thank you.
Thanks to the generosity of our taxpayers, Tempe Elementary has grown to a one-to-one district over the past 5 years. Access to technology is very important, as we have seen during the pandemic. However, many of our children have challenges around internet access. As superintendent, what would you do to help bridge this gap so that all students have the access?
So I think about what I just said with the equitable access. So the first piece is doing an audit around access and who is lacking access to know what students that is impacting. And from there, once we know which students that is impacting and which families need our support, then it's coming up with ways, collaboratively, how are we going to partner with organizations, partner with the city, or do other things to try to make sure that all of our families have access to technology. It's just not okay for a student to be at home with no access to internet and Wi-Fi. You have the device, and they can't participate in the learning process, and they're falling further and further behind. So, got to find out where that's happening, identify those families, and then work together to come up with a plan to make sure that every family in Tempe Elementary School District has access to technology and the internet.
Thank you. Okay, once again, we have Krista from Gilliland Middle School.
In Tempe School District 3, over 80% of our students are students of color. While we have been working tirelessly to attract and retain more ethnically diverse staff, we still have more work to do. Please tell us your plan for hiring and retaining a more diverse teaching force.
Thank you, Krista.
In TD3, over 80% of our students are students of color. Although we have been working tirelessly to attract and retain more ethnically diverse staff, we have more work to do. Please tell us your plan for hiring and retaining a more diverse teaching force.
I'll go back to what I mentioned with the equity question. So if that's a priority, then it's one that we identify and we outline, and it should be in our strategic plan. If we want a more diverse staff in Tempe Elementary School District, it should be outlined, it should be a priority. And then if it's a priority, then you seek to find staff, minority staff, to be support staff, to be teachers, to be administrators. This is one that I don't see as difficult. I think if it's a priority, you set it as a priority and you look for it and then you hire. And it can happen. It has to be a priority for when you are looking to hire staff and teachers and administrators.
Thank you. Once again, we have Sonia from Connolly Middle School.
Now more than ever, our students and staff are facing social, emotional, and mental health needs. Tempe Elementary has a long history of implementing best practices to meet these needs, but there is always more work to do. What role do you see schools playing in addressing the social, emotional, learning, and mental health needs of students?
Thank you.
Now more than ever, our students and staff are facing social, emotional, and mental health needs. Tempe Elementary has a long history of implementing best practices to meet these needs, but there is always more work to do. What role do you see schools playing in addressing the social, emotional learning and mental health needs of students?
Thank you. I think it starts by knowing what are the needs that students in the schools have. And I think about what I said earlier when we talked about schools. Some schools need things that are the same, and then there are some things that are unique needs. And so when we get into the social emotional learning area, it's a broad category. So I think you really have to take an assessment to look at what are the needs within your school. Is this around anxiety? Is it other things? Is it more with relationships? Conflict? What are the specific issues? And then from there, if we know what those supports are, then we can design programs, curriculum to support our students based on that. But within a whole multi-tiered system of support, you're going to want to make sure that you include the social emotional piece in there because it's critical, and in many cases it is a root cause to other issues. And so it has become just as important, if not more, than academics, because it plays a very important role, and many times in how a student is feeling able to perform while at school.
Thank you. Okay, we have Tiago from McCamey Academy.
Why is our community critical to our success as a school district? And please describe success as a school and/or district leader in partnering with these community stakeholders.
Okay, the question is, why is our community critical to our success as a school district? And please describe successes as a school and/or district leader in partnering with community stakeholders.
Because we can't do it alone. We just can't. And so we need our community to work with us when we are trying to help educate students. It has been through partnerships that I have even come to learn and know in better ways that I could support. One success that I experienced while being a principal was partnering with a local university in bringing a documentary to our school called Project Enye. At the time, I did not know what that meant. I was really unclear, so okay, well, what is this? And then the filmmaker and the organization bringing it forward says, well, this is about first-generation Latino students and the search for identity while they're here in America and the culture of home. And I said, wow. So it was amazing, and we watched the documentary with our students, with the community. We invited the community with parents. We had a panel. We had students participate in the panel. And I tell you, I learned so much from that, because one thing we can all relate to is our path and search for identity. So there's things like that that you don't just get in a class or just in school, and those partnerships can be key. And we've done another one while I was at the district called the Defamation Experience, and helping students to see kind of a scenario and a court case play out, and they got to be a part of the jury. And it really fostered some deep level discussions that happened afterwards. And again, this was wonderful, another partnership with the community and Maricopa Community Colleges. So there are these additional experiences that mean so much, and they don't just teach our students things, they teach educators and our community, and we just become better. And it creates more empathy and understanding, and we learn a little bit more about each other.
Thank you. Okay, we have Hanna from Fees.
Please tell us about a hero in your life and how they have influenced you as a leader.
Thank you, Hanna.
Please tell us about a hero in your life and how they have influenced you as a leader.
This is a tough one because we're coming up on a year for this person passing, so forgive any emotion you see from me. My first principal, Dr. Joe McDonald, was a very special person in my life, and I would say a hero, and a hero to many. As a young teacher there, he made you feel like you were just the best and that you were on top of the world, and you just didn't want to disappoint him. He saw the best in everyone. And I just remember being a second or third year teacher and being with my friend who was also a teacher. We co-taught together, and someone would come around and he'd say, do you see these two? You know, they are master teachers and they're the best. And we'd just be sitting there like, oh my gosh, we're so not. But but later, like, you gave it your all because you didn't dare want to disappoint him. And he did that with everyone. He did that with students. He did that with his administrators. He did that with teachers. He did that with staff. And so when I talked about that level of, that standard of excellence in the beginning in that first experience, it really was credit to him and that energy that he gave. So he is my hero in that I strive to try to see the best in everyone. And I want to create conditions like that, where students believe they can be anything that they can be, that our employees believe that they are effective, they are masters at what they do, and that our administrators believe they are master leaders. So he is regularly in my mind because he was a champion for all, and so that's what I strive to be. I'm so glad I got through that without crying.
Thank you, Dr.
Yes.
Wilson. Okay, Dr. Wilson, do you have any final thoughts that you would like to share with the Tempe Elementary School District community?
Yes, just that this is really surreal for me right now to be in what was my junior high in the 80s, and to be sitting here right now and an applicant, a candidate to be your next superintendent. I really love Tempe. I love the families of Tempe, and it would mean the world to me to give back to the district and the schools that played a role in my upbringing and in my development as a person. I love being in education, love working with schools and students. I think you all are amazing. And so I would be beyond honored to be your next superintendent. And if selected, you have no idea how much that would mean to me, both personally and professionally. So I thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, we're going to be taking just a short break in between candidates as they switch rooms, but I want to do a couple of reminders. First and foremost, I want to thank Dr. Wilson for participating. Once again, if you could give her a round of applause for her participation. I also want to make sure that we give a big round of applause to our students who asked great questions. You guys did a tremendous job, so thank you for being participants. And we're not done with you yet, so we have a little bit of time here. So I want to do a couple of reminders. Once again, to our community that is present here, you do have the blue cards, the comment cards. We have the box in the back, so please make sure that you're putting those comment cards there in the back. You can also, if you are at home watching, you can submit feedback. You can email me directly. It's michael.mangini@tempeschools.org. If you can't remember michael.mangini@tempeschools.org, and I know it's difficult to spell, you can also go to the staff directory at tempeschools.org. A couple of reminders, the superintendent survey is still open and available at tempeschools.org/superintendent search. Updates and information about our search will continue to be found at that website. Students, if I could actually turn the attention to you guys, could I have, let's see, how about we go in the order that we started? Can I have our first person, can I have Sonia come on up to the microphone, please? Sonia, I have a quick question for you. I know that this has been a difficult year for all students, but could you please share a positive experience that you have had this school year so far?
A positive I've had this school year so far would be the fact that work is more easier to do online than in person. I assigned the superintendent picture, and my teachers have actually helped me more, and I've been able to understand more. Could you talk about it for me?
That is fantastic. How about a round of applause for that response? Tiago. Same question for you, Tiago. What is one positive experience that you have had this school year so far?
I've had many experiences, but I really like to show my gratitude to Miss Wolf and Mr. Harris. Miss Wolf is an amazing teacher, inspiring me day to day to do science and stuff. And Mr. Harris always gives you a smile in class, giving you a joke, always making you smile and teaching you stuff.
Thank you, Tiago. Those are exceptional compliments, and we appreciate those comments. Hanna. Hanna, same question. What is a positive experience that you've had this school year so far?
A positive experience about my 8th grade year so far is a geometry class because I have been more determined to succeed in math this year. I would like to thank my math teacher, Miss Barrett, for helping me.
I'm sure she appreciates hearing that as well. Okay, Ethan. Ethan, once again, this year has been difficult in many different ways. What's been one positive experience that you've had so far? That's fantastic to hear. Thank you, Ethan. Krista. Krista, same question. What is one positive experience that you have had this school year so far?
I've had quite a few positive experiences, and there's one teacher I would like to thank, Miss Ewan. Whenever the school shut down, she's my math teacher. She was my math teacher last year. Whenever the school shut down, she kept on encouraging me to keep on doing math and work up my skills so I could be better at it this year. And she even came over to my house and brought math packets and stuff for me to do while I was at home. And it just really kind of like kept me going in math. And she didn't let me get discouraged with anything, and she's still constantly helping me if I have any questions.
That is fantastic to hear, and we love hearing that tenacity of our teachers, so thank you. Okay, so some of you have already chimed in on a question that I wanted to ask, a follow-up. Sonia, can I have you back up here?
So again, when you're ready to speak, you're going to hold that button there.
And I'll just give you the question real quick. Who's one educator, maybe it's a teacher that you have right now or a teacher that you've had in the past, that you'd like to thank? You have the opportunity to thank them. Who would you like to thank?
Can I thank two teachers?
You absolutely can thank two teachers.
In 7th grade, because that's when I came to school, I had a PE teacher named Miss Blanco, and I wasn't really doing good on the first half of the school year. But she never gave up on me, and she kept encouraging me to do my best. So I'd like to thank her for that, for always being there. And then this year, I have my math teacher, Miss Lynn. She helped me with, because I was struggling with the topic in math, and she helped me understand it more. And my grade was really dropping, and she helped me get that back up by letting me redo assignments and take retakes for our tests.
That is awesome. Thank you for sharing that. We're definitely seeing a pattern in thanking our math teachers, so I'm thinking that that is a great thing. So, okay, same thing. Let's see, Tiago. I know that you've already shared a little bit, but go ahead. One or two teachers or administrators, anyone that you'd like to thank.
Again, I really would like to thank Miss Wolf and Mr. Harris. Me personally, I don't like ELA, but Miss Wolf, amazing teacher, inspired me to love ELA and to work harder every single time. And Mr. Harris, he continued to express my passion for science and help me continue forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Okay. Hanna, come on up here. Same question to you.
I already thanked my math
Thank you, Hannah. Ethan, who is that one or two people that you'd like to thank?
I already thank my math teacher, but I'll thank my language arts teacher because she was there on day one, and she's really helped me learn a lot in the reading and writing process. So I just want to thank her and my math teacher for just encouraging me to learn this and have fun in my class.
Perfect, thank you. Math and ELA getting love in this forum, so that's fantastic. Okay, we have, last but not least, we have Krista. Same question.
I already thanked Miss Yu, my math teacher, but I would also like to thank Mr. Nasser, my science teacher last year. His class has always been interesting, and it was my most favorite class. He's just like a very interesting teacher, and he's there to help you whenever you need it, like anytime, anywhere. It doesn't matter what it's about, he's here to help you, and I just really appreciated that.
Thank you very much. All right, so while our amazing students were responding to those great questions, we have a new guest with us for our forum. We have Dr. James Driscoll, and Dr. Driscoll is the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources at the Mesa Unified School District. And we will go back and begin our questions starting with Sonia.
Please tell us about your personal and professional qualities and experiences that have prepared you to be the next superintendent of Tempe Elementary School District.
And Dr. Driscoll, for the viewers at home, I'm repeating the question in this forum. Please tell us about your personal and professional qualities and experiences that have prepared you to be the next superintendent of Tempe Elementary School District.
Well, first, good evening. I heard you guys cheering in the other room, so I hope that when I leave, you cheer for me. If not, I won't take offense to it. I'll cry, and I'll call my wife and daughter, say they didn't cheer for me, but it'll be all right. Well, first, I'd like to start off by tell you guys about me personally. So I grew up just outside of Detroit, Michigan. My mother had me just out of high school. She was a single mother. Like many people in our communities, it was tough living. We were on welfare. We struggled to make ends meet. But in that struggle, it kind of built the person and the character that I have here today is because of perseverance. My mom and my grandmother used to always say that education is the most important thing you can have, and it's something that they can never take away from you. And so the value of education was huge. My great-grandfather, who I'm named after, had a 6th grade education. And so with that pursuit is why I have, you hear the word doctor, but you don't know, I have 4 master's degrees. And it's because of that, and it's because of the importance of education that I know and how it opens up avenues for all of us, why I value public education so much. My current role, I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources for Mesa Public Schools. We have about 66,000 students in our district. We have over 10,000 employees in our district. And so a running joke is I picked a great time to be in HR when we have a pandemic. And so as you can see, I'm a little gray right here, but before I got into HR, I was like, my hairline was up to here. It was tight, I kept it nice. Now I'm thinning and balding, and I have HR deal with it. It's a running joke. But before that, I was a principal at elementary school. We were a Title I school. We serviced about 760 kids, K through 6. We also had a Montessori program there, and what I would tell you is I lived 2 different worlds, because on one side of our house, we had students who had many different needs, students that came to school that participated in a free breakfast program, who participated in a free lunch program, and then on the other side of our house in our Montessori program, we had people that were multimillionaires. And so seeing diverse pathways for our students, it was amazing. And so one of the things I prided myself on was to create those same opportunities for all kids in our campus, whether they were special education or whether they were Montessori or in our, what we called our traditional track. And so that is one of the key things, is that I had success with creating those pathways for our students, because ultimately I want every student, regardless where they're at, they should get the same learning experience afforded to them. And so that is a big thing for me. How does that prepare me to be the next superintendent? I think a superintendent should have multiple perspectives. They should see different avenues for how people interact. I've had roles where I was a special education director, so I understand how it is when I deal with parents that say, hey, I have a special needs student and I need help. We need resources, we need support. That is a crucial thing for our families, to provide them with support for their students, because ultimately that's where they come to school. The schools is the biggest resource for them, and we need to advocate for them. And so those are some of the personal and professional qualities that I have to be prepared for the next superintendent.
Thank you. Our next question is from Tiago from McCamey Academy.
Our children are at the center of every decision we make in Tempe Elementary. What will your key priorities be to ensure that every student has the support that they need to be successful?
Our children are at the center of every decision we make in Tempe Elementary. What will your key priorities be to ensure that every student has the support that they need to be successful?
I think it first starts with just that every decision we make has children's best interests in mind. And so the key things that we have to do is say, hey, if we're making a decision, how does that impact all our students? And if it's impacting some of our students in a negative way, we need to ask ourselves the question of why are we doing this? We need to make sure that we ensure equitable opportunities for all students that attend our schools. And so how can we do that? We first look at our policies, look at how our policies are in place. Are our policies a barrier to some of our students? If that is the case, we need to look at our policies and say, hey, can we change that? Ultimately, we need to know all our students, know their strengths, know their needs. If we know their strengths and their needs, then we can obviously help them do the things they need to do, because ultimately our goal should be when you leave Tempe L, you can do whatever you want, whether that's to go to the Tempe Union, whether that's to go to another district, whether it's to be an entrepreneur. We want to prepare our students for critical skills, to be problem solvers and critical thinkers. And so ultimately every decision that we make comes back to that. Is this in the best interest of our children here? And if it's not, we need to reassess that and make changes to it.
Thank you. Our next question is from Hanna from Fees.
Tempe Elementary is a 32-year award-winning district. When it comes to financial stability, if you become our superintendent, how will you plan for and ensure fiscal responsibility and good stewardship of all available resources?
Tempe Elementary is a 32-year award-winning district when it comes to financial stability. If you become our superintendent, how will you plan for and ensure fiscal responsibility and good stewardship of all available resources?
I think the first step in that is look at our strategic plan. Look at our goal, look at our vision and mission statement, and make sure that our decisions that we're making financially match that. So if it's in our strategic plan that we're going to attract teachers and retain teachers and be highly competitive, as our decisions and our finances leaning towards that way. A big thing that we need to do to give transparency to our community is to bring them a part of the budgeting process. And that can be done very easily by bringing them into the step and say, here's our budgeting process. Here's how it works for school districts. A lot of times people don't understand there's so many different nuances to school finance. For instance, I had a parent say, hey, why don't you use your M&O budget to pay for desks and more computers in our school? Well, I tell them, well, our M&O budget can't be used for that. It's a capital budget that we can actually buy desks and computers. And so educating our community on what the budget process has and what we can use for, that helps them be enlightened. And then once they're enlightened to that situation, bringing them into the conversation and say, okay, here's our strategic plan, here's our priorities. Does this still align to what we want to do? If it doesn't, then we say, okay, where are we going to put our resources at? If we truly want to have our the best teachers in the state and the best highly compensated teachers in the state, is our budget aligned to it? Are we allocating our resources to that? One of the key things with the budget that people don't know is pretty much in every district, 80% of your budget is people. And so when you look at that, 80% of most district budget has to do with people, whether it's their benefits, salaries. And so when you look at that, how can you maximize your resources? As a superintendent, we have to look at it. How are we utilizing our resources? Are we being efficient? Are there areas where we're not being efficient? If we are being efficient, then we can go back to our community and say, hey, with these available resources, we're doing this, but it takes this much more to get to schools and that type of level of education that you want for your students. And that's when you have bonds and that's when you have overrides. But the community is more supportive in it because they've been a part of the process. They see where the budget is, they see where it's being spent, and they see the areas that they want for their community to have in their schools. They're much more active to say, hey, I want to be a part of this. Yeah, this is why we make the decision. And then they become your biggest advocates because they actually know. You've been transparent with them and they know the process, so they can support it. And that's the key. Your community wants trust. They want to know that, hey, when we pass a bond, that you're actually doing with the money that you say you're going to do with it. And how you build trust is being consistent over small steps, saying, hey, we said we're going to use this money to do this, and guess what? This is where we use the money at. And you can see that, and you can come see our books about that. So,
Thank you.
sorry, I could get going on finance, and then you guys will say, hey, we only had 45 minutes for this, and we're not staying any longer for this. So I will try to keep them short, so I apologize.
Thank you. Okay, we have Ethan from Ward Traditional Academy.
Parents play a critical role in their child's success. How will you build relationships with parents, increase parent involvement, and work with parents to meet the needs of their children?
Parents play a critical role in their child's success. How will you build relationships with parents, increase parent involvement, and work with parents to meet the needs of their children?
I think the first step is being present and giving parents the opportunity to have access to me. And so the first part of what I would do is coming into this district is set up times for parents to come and meet. Set up in your own neighborhoods, not come into the district office, I come out to you. Because ultimately for the superintendent, I want to know what you want. I want to know what you value as a district from the parent's perspective. Next, I got to know about your child. And so what are we doing as a district to support you and your child? What are things that we're not doing to support you? And those are the things that we take back and say, hey, are we living up to our mission? Are we living up to our vision? Because if our parents don't agree with that, then we have a disconnect. And so parents are crucial for that. But you got to give them the chance to be able to share their voice. And so one of the things we talk about before is we call it psychological safety. And it's a big word that Google uses, but it really comes down to this: having the freedom and the autonomy to be able to voice your concerns and know that there's no retaliation or anything from it. And we have to give parents that voice. Too many times when we communicate, we say, hey, we communicated to you because we sent out this email to you. But if you don't check your emails, how do you know we communicated? Oh, we sent out this on our webpage. Well, if you don't have internet service at your house, how did you know it was on the webpage? So we have to look at the vehicle and the means that our parents need to be communicated in, and then communicate with them via those needs for their child. Because ultimately, for us to be successful, it's not just the school district, it's all of us, it's the whole community. They always say it takes a village to raise a child. It takes the whole community to be a part of it. And we will be as successful as we are with our partnerships between us as this district and us as the parent, and working with that balance and making sure that we're listening to our parent needs. Because ultimately, our parents are our biggest consumers. We need them to stay in Tempe to have kids. They have choices, and so we want to make sure that their choice is Tempe Elementary School District, and by doing that, we need to make sure we're listening to them and understanding the needs that they have and the choices and options and education that they want.
Thank you. Next, we have Krista from Gillen Middle School.
How will you involve all stakeholders in decision-making and future planning?
That's a very good question.
That is a great question. The question is, how will you involve all stakeholders in decision-making and future planning?
So when we say that involve all stakeholders, I think the first thing is we have to look at what decision we're making and who are being impacted by that decision. And so what I would tell you is, if you're being impacted by that decision, you need to be at the table having that discussion, because you're ultimately the ones being impacted. So how you involve all stakeholders is first look at the decisions that are being made and make sure the people who are going to be impacted by that decision have a seat at the table to voice what they believe. A lot of times we sit there and we say, oh, we have all the answers, and then we hear from other people and they look at things in a different way. And you say, oh, I didn't think of it that way. That's why we need you to be involved. We need our parents to be at the table. We need our stakeholders to be involved in decisions that are going to impact them, because they're there. They're spending their time in that space. We come in, myself, and I might be there for a couple of minutes. They live it weeks, months. And so they have a better vantage point to make that decision than I would staying there for 3 minutes. So we literally need to have all of you involved in any decision that's going to impact you. We need to have you up there and give you the space to be able to do it. Again, it comes back to reaching you where you're at, not us having you come to us. So if the school community, we're making a decision about that school, rather than say you come to district office, we go to the school. We come to your neighborhood and have that communication. That's another thing about it. People don't feel comfortable going places sometimes because you're, as we say in Detroit, you're on their turf. You need to go to their turf. You need to go where they live, where their community is, and have those conversations, because people feel much more comfortable when they're around familiar people, when they're around familiar areas where they grow up and live in. And so you want to make sure you go to them to give them that opportunity to be able to voice their concerns and to voice their opinions.
Thank you. Okay, once again, we have Sonia from Connolly Middle School.
Please tell us about your success as a principal and or district leader in developing partnerships with higher education and community partners to support the needs and successes of our students.
Okay, the question, please tell us about your success as a principal and or district leader in developing partnerships with higher education and community partners to support the needs and successes of our students.
The first one I would share is the district leader. So in my role in human resources, we have a partnership with ASU University, and what we've done is we call it reimagining the workforce, the next generation of the education workforce. What we have done is we've created, we've utilized teaching contracts, and we have 4 student teachers that are involved in it. So we took a teacher contract, we pay our student teachers a stipend, we also pay a mentor teacher a stipend, so we take that contract and that's how we pay them. The beautiful thing about that is, one, at the time before we started this program, we weren't getting student teachers in our district. And you say, why is that important? Well, part of recruiting talent is you have to have them there. And if you don't have them in your buildings, it's hard for you to create that talent. So by doing that and creating that partnership, we now have a steadfast pipeline of student teachers who in turn become teachers in our system. Utilizing that, and I don't know if you guys know this, public education, and in particular at the higher education level, the College of Education has seen a decline in enrollment. So I'll give you ASU for example. ASU in 2005 had about 6,000 students in the College of Education. In 2019, the fall semester, they had it like 2,200. So about 2/3 of their population from 2005 to 2019 has went away. And so what does that mean? That means we have to think of things differently. Well, if you think about it as a system, they're graduating 572 students in their bachelor's program and 728 total. So if they're graduating 572 and there are 212 districts in the state and everybody gets 2 teachers, that only leaves 3 teachers for your district. Well, we know we need more teachers than that. And so by creating those partnerships with ASU and getting the student teachers on our campuses, we're bypassing them because we already see the talent. They're already here. And if we really want them, we can get them in our system because they become familiar. They know what we have as a school. They know what we have as a district. They know the opportunities they have here, and we keep them. So that's the key of retaining and creating those partnerships with them. In terms of, I think the next question was community partners to support the needs of students. As a principal at my school, we worked with our community partners to provide resources for our students. I was able to create what we called an innovation lab at my school, where we had thousands of dollars donated by local corporations, Intel, Microsoft, to provide educational experiences for our students. The key is we want all our students to have those experiences. Experiences lead to our students having curiosity about different things in their life. The more curious they're about things, the more engaged they are in the student learning process. So by utilizing our outside organizations to provide those resources to our students were the beneficiary. They had great learning experiences that they wouldn't have had we not had those partnerships. And so looking at your community, looking at your businesses and community leaders, you can create partnerships with them that will enhance the student learning experience for all our students.
Thank you. Okay. Once again, we have Tiago from McCamey Academy.
As a community, we have always placed a priority on educating the whole child, including PE, sports, visual, and performing arts. How will you work to support the continuation of these programs that are critical in educating the whole child?
Okay, once again, that question. As a community, we have always placed a priority on educating the whole child, including PE, sports, visual, and performing arts. How will you work to support the continuation of these programs that are critical in educating the whole child?
I think the first step as being a superintendent is advocating at the national and state level for the importance of educational funding. Most of the times when you see school district having to cut funding, some of the things that you value most, the arts, are the first ones to be cut. And so the first thing for me is, as a superintendent, is to advocate for that. The second thing is to show all the great things that happen in those programs. A lot of times people don't know the wonderful work that happens and how they impact student achievement. Our students need options. Not all our students are going to grow up to say, hey, I want to be a mathematician. As a former math teacher at the junior high, I would tell you, they would say, I hate math, my mom hated math, my grandmother hated math, her grandmother hated math. And so our students need other options. Some of our students are great musicians, and they need that experience to be a whole child. So we have to value that and highlight those experiences, but we also have to make sure that we're cultivating those environments that all our students are exposed to those experiences. Sometimes when we have programs at different sites, some of our students don't get access to it. So we have to make sure we're creating pathways that all our students in our district, whether we have a magnet program at another site, they have the ability to go to those sites and to be able to be exposed to those resources. So as a superintendent, is to make sure we have equitable pathways for all our students to be exposed to some of those rich resources in fine art programs.
Thank you. Okay. Hanna from Fees.
What will you do to help the community recognize TD3 as an institution that values equity, fairness, and inclusivity?
All right. Thank you, Hanna. The question is, what will you do to help the community recognize TD3 as an institution that values equity, fairness, and inclusivity?
I think the biggest thing to do is model that and be out in the community and showing that this is something that we value and putting it into the mainstream. It's enough to say we value it, but you have to show it, and you have to show it in your actions. You have to show it in your policies. You have to show it in how you make decisions. If you say, hey, we value equity, but then you make decisions that go counterintuitive to that, your community says to you, you don't really value equity, you're just giving us lip service. And so the first thing you have to do is say, hey, what decisions we're making, we need to bring that to the forefront. So we say to ourselves, if this decision is going to negatively impact a group, then we shouldn't make that decision. Because if we value equity and we want equitable practice and we know the decision that we're making is going to be inequitable for some of our students, then we shouldn't be making that. By doing that, it shows our community that, hey, they're really valuing that word. It's not just a word to them, they're putting meaning into it. Also, as the superintendent, you have to be out there. You have to be out in the communities, understanding what's going on the playing field. A lot of the stuff that happens in our schools, you need to know and be abreast of it and see it. And when you see it, you need to be able to address it. So if you're out in the community, you're out having those conversations with parents, you're out at the schools looking at the things that are going on within our communities, you can anticipate things that are changing and say, hey, how can we address it? The schools are a beacon of hope for many people in the community. They're the most visible things in most of our communities are our schools. And so we need to make sure we're making that a priority and delivering on our promise for that.
Thank you. Okay, we have Ethan from Ward Traditional Academy with our next question.
Thanks to the generosity of our taxpayers, Tempe Elementary has grown to a 1-to-1 ratio district over the past 5 years. Access to technology is very important, as we have seen during the pandemic. However, many of our children have challenges around internet access. As superintendent, what would you do to help bridge this gap so all students have access?
Okay, our question. Thanks to the generosity of our taxpayers, the Tempe Elementary District has grown to a 1-to-1 district over the past 5 years. Access to technology is very important, as we've seen during the pandemic. However, many of our children have challenges around internet access. As superintendent, what would you do to help bridge this gap so that all students have access?
I think that's the most critical role of a superintendent, is advocating for their students. And so one of the big things I would do as a superintendent is get out with our community resources and our partners to get us hotspots. I was able to see that being done in the district I work in, where we gave out all this technology to our students only to find out that they couldn't even use the internet at home. And so how do we do that? We go and we work with our community partners, we work with the city. We look at our own budget and say, hey, if we prioritize that students are our most valuable resources and we want equitable learning experience for all of them, then we need them to have technology and we need them to have internet access to be able to utilize the one-to-one device. So there where it goes about transparency in our budget process. As a community, we need to look at that, and we might say, hey, for our budget, we need to invest in hotspots for some of our students so they can actually use the technology that we spent money for them to be able to do. And so the key thing for us is to look at what areas can we tap into to get resources for our students in those hotspots, in that internet access, so they can utilize the technology and create equitable opportunities for all our students. If we don't do that, then that goes to that question again. We talk about equity, but we know we have a population of students who do not have internet access. How are they accessing all these learning tools that our teachers are putting out if they can't access it from their home? And so we have to ask ourselves, is our practices aligning to what we say? And if they're not, then we need to come up with a solution. And sometimes that solution takes the help of community members, and that's why parents are our key partner in this, and also our community members, from our city council members to the state. That's another big thing, the advocacy at our state level in terms of our budget. We know this pandemic has changed the way public education is done. And so we need our state leaders and our state legislators to realize that and actually provide funding for that so we can have equitable resources for all our students.
Thank you. Okay, we have Krista from Gillen Middle School.
In Tempe School District 3, over 80% of our students are students of color. Although we've been working tirelessly to attract and retain more ethnically diverse staff, there's still more work to do. Please tell us your plan for hiring and retaining a more diverse teaching community.
Thank you, Krista. In TD3, over 80% of our students are students of color. Although we have been working tirelessly to attract and retain a more ethnically diverse staff, we have more work to do. Please tell us your plan for hiring and retaining a more diverse teaching force.
You know, I think the biggest thing that we have to do is tapping into our own resources in our own community, and that's the students that we currently have in our district. So we talk about having, attracting and having a diverse students of color is 80%. Well, we need to tap into them and get them interested in public education. One of the things that we look at in my current district and what I'm working on is we've created pathways for those students. So our goal is, hey, you're a student, you're interested in being in education, hey, we're going to give you a college scholarship. We have our partnership through ASU, we get tuition credits for our students. And so we could tell that student, hey, if you want to be in education, we value you and we want you, and guess what, we'll help you pay for college. You could go to college at ASU and go there tuition free based on that partnership. The next thing is looking at where can we get these teachers at. What I would tell you is, as I shared earlier with you, the College of Education across the board, across the nation, are seeing a decline in enrollment. That is huge, so we're going to be battling that. So we have to make education more attractive. We have to be purposeful in our marketing of our resources and all the available options that we have as a district. One of the things we have to do is go recruit differently. You know, there are schools of historically black institutions, historically black colleges across the country that we can go and tap into and do recruiting efforts that they would love to come work in Mesa, in Arizona. We can do that. And so we have to be cognizant of that, look at the means, look where people are actually coming into, look at centers where they're actually graduating a more diverse population of students, but more importantly is we have to grow our own program from within. And so if we do that, that is one way we can combat that, because if we grow from within, our community reflects what we want our teaching population to be. And so started at by looking at and targeting our students and saying, hey, there's a great gig in education. You can do all these great things. Look at the wonderful teachers that are inspiring you. When I came in, all the students were talking about the teachers that they make an impact for you. I know my man right there talks about he want to be science. He loves science, but his ELA teacher was his best teacher. So let's cultivate you. Hey, you could be a science teacher. You can create that experience for other students to make them love science, and they can say, hey, you are the best teacher they had. So really tapping into our resources, our students, is key to do that.
Thank you. Okay, once again, Sonia from Connolly Middle School.
More now than ever, our students and staff are facing social, emotional, and mental health needs. Tempe Elementary has a long history of implementing best practices to meet these needs, but there is always more work to do. What role do you see schools playing in addressing the social, emotional, learning, and mental health needs of students?
Okay. The question is, now more than ever, our students and staff are facing social, emotional, and mental health needs. Tempe Elementary has a long history of implementing best practices to meet these needs, but there's always more work to do. What role do you see schools playing in addressing the social, emotional learning, and mental health needs of students?
I think schools play a vital role in that. And one of the things that we've learned is that schools are the haven for our students. We are the touch points. We see students on a daily basis, and so it starts with us. One of the things we can look at is partner with community partnerships to get resources into our schools to help our students with their mental health needs. One of the things we could do is look at our counseling services. The state had grant programs that allowed us to get counselors, more counselors into our schools. Looking at our community partnerships, costs us nothing to provide, to coordinate with those community outreach programs like Community Bridges, other work to come in and give our families support. So really looking at the community and our partnerships and working with them, it can be done. It is a huge endeavor. It takes all of us. And some of our families don't know the resources that are available to them. And so connecting them with those resources in our community that are come free of charge in most cases, that is another vehicle, another avenue for us to help our students. Again, it is a community work. The schools are at the forefront of that, and we have to take that responsibility to say, hey, we're going to help our students. We value our students. We want our students to be successful. And we need to make sure we create opportunities for them to get in touch with those resources so that they can be successful.
Thank you. Okay, we have Tiago from McCamey Academy.
Why is our community critical to our success as a school district? And please describe success as a school and/or district leader in partnering with community stakeholders.
Thank you, Tiago. The question is, why is our community critical to our success as a school district? And please describe successes at a school and/or district leader in partnering with community stakeholders.
I mean, it goes back to what we've been saying for the last 30 minutes, is that it is a community partnership. Our schools, we depend on the people in this room. We depend on our community to select Tempe schools as their choice for education. Without our parents choosing our schools, we would be in a significant trouble. And so the first thing to understand is that we need you, and we need to provide you with the best schools possible that you keep wanting to send your students to our schools. And how we do that is to give you choices, to give you options, but also to give you voice, to listen to you on a daily basis, to say, hey, this is what we need for our schools. These are the supports we need our children to have. And when we do that, that's when we can create those critical roles. As a district leader and partner with community stakeholders, I need to bring you to the table. It's imperative that you're at the table, that your voice is there, that you're being heard. Because when you're being heard and you're being listened to and we're making changes, that's going to impact our whole community in a positive, but it's also going to impact our students. We all know that a teacher is the most critical thing in terms of a student achievement in school. The next most critical is the parent. And I would tell you, if the parents are really involved in students, that actually increases student achievement tenfold. So the more we can get our parents involved, the more they get voices and we can give them resources to help their students at home, the better our students are going to be, the better programming we're going to offer in our school district, and the better our students will be at achieving their dreams and goals.
Thank you. Okay. Our last question from our students, we have Hanna from Fees.
Please tell us about a hero in your life and how they have influenced you as a leader.
Okay, our question is, please tell us about a hero in your life and how they have influenced you as a leader.
You know, the biggest hero in my life is, I would say, is my grandmother. She's no longer with us, but she was the person who looked at me and loved me for me. She was my best friend. She's the person I called every day to say my successes and to talk to me about my failures. I don't want to get choked up because I don't want you guys to tweet that the guy was on TV and this is live stream and he's crying about his grandmother and you're tweeting on Facebook. But she was an amazing woman, and I think I'm the man today. It's because she loved me and she showed me what it takes to be a successful person in this world. I think many of us need that, and so when she passed away, I looked for others to provide that kind of leadership, that kind of love. And I found that in Dr. Delecki. He's a professor at NAU, but he also was the superintendent at Gilbert Public Schools. And I always say he took Gilbert Public Schools from the farmland to what it is now. He opened like 22 to 27 schools in his time as superintendent. But he always shared with me that the biggest thing that people need to know is they need to know you care. And when people know you care about them, they're more willing to do tasks and listen to you because they first know you care. And so I've taken that, and the biggest thing I learned for that is the power of relationships. Again, if you heard nothing else, I've said it over and over again, it takes a community. It takes you to be a part of it. And so we need to develop that relationship. And I know I won't get it overnight. The current superintendent has been in this district for 33 years. She's been able to create relationships with all of you. Some of you were kids in the district when she started in the district, and now you have kids, and some people have grandparents in the district from that. And so it takes time to build that trust and to build those relationships, and that's what I want to do. I want to get out and meet all of you and develop that relationship with you and that trust to let you know that I truly have the best interest of your kid in heart. And we can do this together if we all come together and have that as our mission to really help our kids.
Thank you. Okay, Dr. Driscoll, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with the community?
No, I'm done. What I would say to you is I love Tempe. I've studied you guys from afar and always wanted to be a part of this great organization. You guys have the talent. You have the community here that's vested in the schools, and that's what you look for. I share with people all the time, in my role where I'm at right now, it's a really great job, and I love working with the people I do. And so you have to be selective in where you want to go, because you need to make sure that if you're going to leave that situation, you're going to a place where people value education, where they have the same beliefs about students, where they're just committed to making sure that every student has that chance, and Tempe is that. It is no greater district in our state, and that's why I'm here, because I want to be a part of it. I want to be a part of the Tempe family. I want to be a part of this community because there's so many great things happening here, and I think we're just scratching the surface on what our potential could be. Like I said, I admired the superintendent here and the relationships that she's had, and I just want to be a part of it. I really do. I value you guys, and I want to be a part of the Tempe family.
Thank you, Dr. Driscoll.
Thank you. Thank you. I was nervous that you wouldn't clap. Thank you.
There's your round of applause. And while we're clapping, another round of applause for our students who courageously came up and asked questions this evening. Thank you, guys. Well, thank you all of you for attending our community forum in person or virtually. Please remember, if you're here, you can leave your comment cards in the back in the blue box. Again, if you're watching at home, you have the ability to comment and give me an email directly. It's michael.mangini@tempeschools.org, and I will be accepting those feedback emails until Saturday, November 14th. So thank you again for everyone and your participation, and thank you to our candidates in their interest in Tempe Elementary School District. So thank you and have a good evening.